Hi, UnDaoDu here, and I've been meaning to make this video, but I've just had so many things to do. I just arrived back in Japan, and I've been with my family for 9 months, and certain things take up issue. Plus, I have to take care of things like my car tax, which had expired. So legally, I wasn't able. I'm not able to drive my car, so I had to get that fixed. But I want to talk about what I discovered in traveling to Japan just recently. Now, you may be wondering, how is it that I was possible to travel to Japan? Well, I have a spouse visa. My wife is Japanese, and because of that status, I have a special designation status in my passport that says basically I can come back within a year to Japan on my current visa, and if I do not, then I lose my visa. So, as required by the law, I have to return back within the year. Well, 9 months was up, and I was prompted to return to Japan because National Geographic, NatGeo, um, production company, one of their independent production companies, working on a show on giant hornets, and I've worked on previous shows, and they reached out to me in order to shoot this show. Well, um, I decided, well, let's get back. I'll come back a little earlier than anticipated. I was planning to come back, maybe in November. And I just found out that they recently changed the requirements. As of September 1st, you cannot visit Japan unless you are a Japanese national or have one of these special designation status because you have you're married to a Japanese or a national, or you are a child of a citizen or something. So when I flew back, the plane was empty, and I don't want people who are thinking about visiting Japan. Can I visit Japan? The answer is no. Now there are some few countries that aren't on that quarantine list that can, but the majority of countries like America, um, Canada, and a host of others, and I will try to find the list and post it um, online, can't go. So now I want to talk about certain things that seem rather unfair. For example, as a Japanese national, you do not need to get a COVID-19 test to enter in. However, when I say national, I mean like a citizen. However, if you are a foreigner with a visa living here, you do have to um, get a COVID-19 test within the 72 hours. Now, I was hung up. I got hung up in by customs because of this, and I actually spent an hour waiting for them to decide whether or not my test was okay, legit, and so on and so on and so on. And they eventually deemed it was okay. Now, one of the problems as Americans we face, it's very hard, especially in a state like Florida, to get our tests back within 72 hours. Now, the good news is companies are getting better at it. The irony is, in Japan, the Japanese, when they arrive, they take a COVID-19 test. And I got my results back in under an hour. So you have to wonder, what the heck are they doing around the world when the Japanese can get these results back that quick? And, people say, well, it's because of money. Well, how much is a life worth? I think, a life is worth as much money there is in the world to save lives. And we are losing tens of thousands of lives in America um, because of the politicization by Trump of mask wearing, and, this whole, um, kind of fiasco that is happening in America with COVID-19. Anyway, the it seems the other um, that seemed rather kind of dumb. because even if I did get a COVID-19 test, I have to fly to, I left from Tampa where I was at an airport, which I could have caught it. Then I'm on a packed plane on American Airlines, is basically having super spreader events. They're sending people all around the world, or all around the country in America, packed planes. They've got plenty of planes. It's not like they don't have enough planes. Not like they don't have enough pilots. But just like anything, they're trying to maximize their profits. They were already given a bailout of crazy amounts of money, and now they're basically flying packed planes. Which, if I was to catch COVID-19, I would have caught it on that American Airlines plane from Tampa to Dallas, and from Dallas to LAX. Both those planes were packed. Right, it was ridiculously packed. So the reality is, the 3 days I'm doing really good, quarantining myself, only for American Airlines to give me COVID-19 on my return to Japan. And they didn't. I hope not. I'm in self-contained quarantine right now. Um, on my arrival in LAX, basically we had a jumbo jet. It was only $450 to fly one way to Japan. Very cheap flight. It would cost more for me to fly from Tampa to LAX, right, than it was to fly from LAX to Haneda. Now, my if you are a national, right, like myself, and you arrive, then you have basically two options. You can either self quarantine yourself in a hotel for 14 days, okay, or, and the operative word is or, have someone pick you up at the um, airport, or rent a car, which is ultimately what I did, to go home. Now, this is something that you'll find interesting. The rent a car companies are completely gouging people right now because of Corona-19. There was a $250 surcharge for a one-way use of a car, right, from Toyota Rent-A-Car to a Toyota Rent-A-Car in Komatsu. Komatsu has a Toyota Rent-A-Car facility right outside the airport. So to rent that car was just ridiculously cost. In hindsight, what I could have done was have someone rent a car from there, come up and pick me up and drive me back, on it. Um, the total cost of renting that car was about $650. So um, $650 to go one way to drive 8 hours, is just completely ridiculous. Anyway, so um, I was able to make it back and make it, here. So if you are married to a Japanese, if you do have special status, you're going to have to, number one, send your passport, your gaijin card, and so your registration card. We call it gaijin card, your foreigner card. To the Japanese embassy. They will issue a letter. They're not fast about it. Even though I did talk to a guy who was able to get his letter expedited by the embassy. I was not able to get mine expedited. The woman I had in Miami embassy was really not helpful at all. And I had to actually postpone my flight and take two additional tests. Now, what I did, and I was able to get through on an antibody test, because that's ultimately what I gave them. Because I was fearful whether I would get my test in time, I did an antibody test at LabCorp. And LabCorp antibody test was accepted by the customs authority in Japan. Okay, so the mistake I made coming back was there is kind of a form that officials are supposed to fill out, and I filled it out. And because I filled it out, and it was pretty obvious. If you basically take that form and typeset it and put it in the computer and make that form look like legit, then you would be fine. But because I basically scribbled in all the information on the form and my shitty writing, it caused a red flag. What really caused a red flag was when I had like the date in there, right? And I basically crossed it off, and that was like, ooh, you crossed off an official form. So there is a form there that ultimately it has all the information, your passport number and everything else, and they didn't want it after they know that I filled it out. They didn't want it. So it was one of those things where it's good intention, but the policy and stuff that they had enacted just didn't make any sense. I mean, you can't enact like a government. See, this is classic Japanese government. You enact a policy that doesn't really work for everywhere around the world. We don't have doctors issuing COVID-19 tests. You can't go to your doctor and say get a COVID-19. They're going to go say go to the national health, department and get your test. They're not issuing orders for tests. It's extremely hard. I don't have American health insurance, so I don't have a doctor in America. How am I supposed to get a doctor to issue a test when I live in Japan? I have Japanese health insurance and everything else, but but I don't have U.S. health insurance for this crap. So there's a lot of things that they didn't consider in implementing this law. But the bottom line is, if you are a Japanese national, you don't need to get a test. You just come and they'll test you at the airport. The test is pretty, you spit into a funnel that goes into a little tube and they process it within an hour. They say within 2 hours, but I got mine back with under an hour. And then basically, watch out with renting a car. It's very cost prohibitive. Like I said, it costs like $650 to rent the car to drive from Tokyo to where I live in Fukui. And basically, I took it to drive to pick up my car from the airport at Komatsu. Anyway, I hope this is helpful. Anyway, this is UnDaoDu sharing with you.